Hey there, and welcome back to another video. So as we get started with the new year, I always find it fun to keep up with what other flower farmers are doing and planning by following along with what they share on social media. But back in my early days of growing flowers, social media was sort of this double-edged sword, because watching other growers have flowers in bloom, weeks or sometimes even months before I did, well, it made me question what I was doing wrong. Especially as someone who lives in a slightly cooler climate. I'm considered to be Zone 5B here where I live in West Michigan. I remember feeling so limited by what I thought was a short growing season. I truly believed that I wasn't going to be able to grow flowers for a majority of the year like I saw other flower farmers doing unless I had a greenhouse of my own. But once I learned what it meant to grow seasonal flowers, that's when I realized that it was possible, even for a northern grower like myself, to still have flowers for a large part of the year if I just worked with Mother Nature. And so in today's video, I really wanted to explain first what seasonal flowers are, and then I want to walk you through our calendar so that you have a better understanding of what to plant and when. You guys know the drill by now. If you're ready, let's go. Now when I say seasonal flowers, what I'm actually talking about is a window of time when a flower is naturally in bloom for a given location. On some level, I think we all have a basic understanding of seasonal flowers because we come to expect things like daffodils in the spring. We look forward to the lilac trees blooming in early summer. And as the days get shorter in the fall and the nights get cooler, we look for signs of the chrysanthemums beginning to bloom. As a flower farmer, I think it's a great strategy to be able to harness the power of seasonal flowers. Understand and recognize those natural cycles in nature that bring about the right conditions for a particular group of flowers to thrive so that you can have a steady supply of flowers across multiple seasons if you so desire. So let's begin by discussing the one season of flowers I think everyone is most familiar with, and that's summer. During the warm months of summer, most flower gardens come alive. The season is marked by a wide range of flowers that truly grow best with warm temperatures and lots of light. This is the time of year when tender annuals really thrive. Now, tender annuals, as their name implies, are flowers that live for only one growing season. They germinate, grow, flower, and then produce seeds all in a single season. They're tender, meaning they cannot tolerate cold temperatures, and so their life cycle ends with the arrival of frost in early autumn. Some of my favorite examples of tender annuals include flowers like zinnias, celosia, sunflowers, cosmos, and basil. So why should you grow this group of flowers? Well, for starters, this group of flowers is what I consider the starting point for most flower farmers or wannabe gardeners. Of all the flower groups, tender annuals are probably the easiest to grow and require only a minimal investment. For me, by growing tender annuals, it's helped me to build my confidence so that I can learn to grow other groups of flowers. If you want to grow tender annuals yourself, here's what you're going to need to know. As I've mentioned, tender annuals are not able to tolerate cold temperatures. And so the time to plant this group of flowers is during your area's frost-free growing season. Now, to determine your area's frost-free growing season, simply refer to your region's hardiness zone as assigned by the USDA. Here in Zone 5B, our last frost typically hits on May 15th, and then our first frost hits around October 15th. Between those two dates, between May 15th and October 15th, is the time of the year where I'm focused on growing and tending to our tender annuals. Now the next group of flowers I want to discuss is hardy annuals. Hardy annuals can be a great way to extend your flower season without investing in expensive infrastructure like high tunnels or heated greenhouses. For me, the idea of growing hardy annuals was a little bit harder to grasp. It took a while for me to realize that not all flowers like warm temperatures. There are in fact flowers that not only survive the cold seasons, but actually thrive in them. Hardy annuals are similar to tender annuals in that they go from seed to making their own seed in a single season. They just tend to follow a different calendar as they're more tolerant of cold. As I said, tender annuals really thrive in warm temperatures, but hardy annuals shut down when faced with too warm a weather. This is why hardy annuals do best in early spring, while temperatures are still cool. Though it's taken me a lot of trial and error to get used to growing this category of flowers, I enjoy how this group of flowers is able to fill a hole in my calendar. You know, hardy annuals tend to bloom during the window of time between when my spring flowering bulbs have just finished blooming and before my tender annual flowers really ramp up and begin blooming in the garden. Some of my favorite hardy annuals to grow here in West Michigan are things like black-eyed Susans, feverfew, yarrow, and even snapdragons. If you're wanting to give hardy annuals a try, you're going to need to count back 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date, and that will mark the start of what's considered to be early spring for your area. Here that means that our spring starts roughly in the middle of March. Now there are some flower varieties that are hardy enough to survive winter in your area. That is, they can tolerate the cold temperatures your region experiences during the wintertime, and therefore those hardy annuals can be planted in the fall. You will need to do some research to really know if a particular hardy annual can be fall planted in your area, because not all hardy annuals have the same tolerance of cold. I always recommend that you reference the book Cool Flowers by Lisa Mason Ziegler, as the book does a great job of listing the hardiness of specific flower varieties. I'll actually link that book in the description box below. Now understand that fall planted hardy annuals will bloom at the same time as your other spring planted hardy annuals. The advantage of fall planting is that you usually get a stronger, higher quality plant come spring. You see, a fall planted hardy annual begins its life cycle as a seed in the fall, and then overwinters as a young plant, developing a strong, well-established root system, which allows that plant to flower as a much more robust plant in the springtime. Once you get the hang of hardy annuals, you'll often wonder how you ever had a flower season without them. The last category of flowers that I want to touch base on today is bulb flowers. For us here at Two Sisters Flower Farm, bulbs really help to round out our season. Because I've sort of defined each of the previous categories that we've discussed, I will say that bulbs are merely a category of plants that store their complete life cycle in an underground storage structure that we commonly refer to as a bulb. Spring flowering bulbs, in particular, are our farm's earliest blooming flowers, even earlier than our hardy annuals, and they really help us to get a jump on the flower season. Understand that even though these bulbs bloom in the spring, think tulips and daffodils, they do require a cold period to initiate dormancy so the bulb can prepare itself for new growth come spring. What this means is that if you want an early spring garden, you're going to have to do a little bit of fall planting. We plant all of our spring flowering bulbs in the fall before the ground has had a chance to freeze, in order to give them that necessary time to root and cool before they're able to put on a beautiful spring display for us. Now, there's a lot of advantages to growing bulbs as part of your seasonal lineup. One being that flower bulbs in particular can be forced to bloom, which can lengthen the number of weeks which you have some flowers available for your customers. I went a little deeper into this topic in this video here, where I shared a little insight as to how we're extending our spring season by several weeks by forcing our tulip bulbs. And then too, in this video right here, I talk about forcing amaryllis bulbs indoors for a really stunning winter display of flowers. I'll link both of those videos in the description box below if you're interested in learning more. Perhaps the biggest downside to bulbs is their initial cost. Especially compared to a packet of seeds, bulbs can be a much bigger investment for your flower farm, making them a riskier crop to grow. But if you have the patience and are willing to take on a bit of risk, I can't encourage you enough to experiment with spring flowering bulbs, as they're some of my most favorite flowers that we harvest all season long. As you can see, by growing seasonal flowers, we're able to have a consistent supply of flowers that extends beyond our traditional warm season of growing. It's my hope that by having a better understanding of when to plant seasonal flowers, this will help you to identify which key crops you can grow and harvest for each of your key seasons. I truly hope that you found the information within this video helpful, and if you did, I'd really appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up, as that lets me know what kind of content you guys enjoy seeing more of. Also, if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button below, as that really helps us out. Let me just say thank you guys for hanging out with me here today. As always, I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye guys.